A flurry of new appointments to the incoming Trump administration, including a top Obamacare critic slated to head Health and Human Services. Plus, Mitt Romney is getting a second interview for Secretary of State. This is Outnumbered. I'm Meghan McCain, here today, host of After the Bell on Fox Business. Melissa Francis, also from FBN, Dagan McDowell, Fox News political and legal analyst, Ebony Williams. And today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, we welcome back from the great state of Utah, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jason Chaffetz. And sir, you are outnumbered.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yes, I love having mountain state people around as an Arizona girl. All right, let's get started.
All right.
The big announcements coming out of Trump Tower. First, high sources in the transition telling Fox News that former Labor Secretary Elaine Chao is President-elect Trump's pick for Transportation Secretary. She's the wife of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Mr. Trump also tapping Obamacare critic and Georgia Congressman Tom Price to head the Health and Human Services Department. And Mr. Trump is meeting with Mitt Romney for a second time over dinner tonight as he weighs who will be his Secretary of State. But others are still reportedly in the mix for that post, including Chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Corker, who Trump is also meeting with today. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani and former CIA Chief General Petraeus. General Petraeus had this to say about his meeting with the president-elect yesterday.
He basically walked us around the world, showed a great grasp of a variety of the challenges that are out there and some of the opportunities as well. So very good conversation, and we'll see where it goes from here.
So, Congressman Chaffetz, tonight Mitt Romney is going on his second one-on-one date with Donald Trump. It's going to be the most dramatic rose ceremony ever to find out who's going to be Secretary of State. It's like The Bachelor, and you know you have Rudy Giuliani and people in the back saying I'd be a better match for him. Who do you think he will ultimately choose?
Any one of those four choices is pretty good, but the idea of Donald Trump getting together with Mitt Romney, maybe there can be peace in the Middle East if those two can get together. So. I don't know. They're all four good choices.
You don't have a favorite?
I mean, I'm partial to Mitt Romney. I just think he resides in my state of Utah. I'm a huge fan. I spent 100 days on the road when he campaigned for president. But all four of them, Rudy Giuliani, David Petraeus, has an exceptional understanding of the world. And certainly the senator is more than qualified as well.
Dagan, do you agree that it's kind of like The Bachelor and the rose ceremony?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he owned the Miss Universe pageant, so I felt like it was kind of like a pageant initially with all the people walking in and out of the Trump Tower. But there is the drama, which I soak up each and every day. But it does speak to, and you can disagree with me, Congressman, to an extraordinary, rigorous process that he is going through in terms of interviewing people. And I like the fact that he's talking to people who don't necessarily agree with him. Mitt Romney, for example, called Russia our greatest geopolitical threat. Trump sounds a different tone. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn sounding a different tone on Russia. David Petraeus, his entire strategy in terms of kind of troop-intensive strategy in Iraq and Afghanistan doesn't kind of dovetail with what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail. His idea of we need to maybe stay in the Middle East even after we're out of Iraq doesn't dovetail with Donald Trump. Is that reassuring?
Well, look, the president-elect is secure in his own skin. The idea that he's looking at people that disagreed with him and disagreed with him even as a person, I think speaks to the strength of Donald Trump and what he's looking at, because he's not afraid to surround himself with diversified thought and diversified people. And as he rounds out this cabinet, I think it's getting to be a very impressive group, better than I think most people thought, and it's really impressive how much personal time he's taken. I've talked to a couple people who've actually been in some of these meetings with him, and they're just so impressed on the wide variety of questions and the personal interest that he takes in this. It's really important.
Has been made, though, of this, conflict within the transition team. And Megan, you and I were talking about this before the show. I might even ask you, I mean, do you buy into this idea that there's this huge rift and Kellyanne Conway has gotten rogue? We saw Jason Miller say on Fox News Channel earlier today that she had Donald Trump's blessing. When she went out, she asked permission to go out and speak her mind on the Sunday shows. I wasn't the least bit surprised to hear that he knew she was going to say that. I mean, what do you make of all that?
I understand what it feels like to be like, from day one, one. I was loyal to this candidate. I believed in them from day one. And I think that's where Kellyanne Conway at Newt Gingrich and Rudy Giuliani are feeling right now, that somehow their loyalty should be repaid with maybe cabinet positions. And obviously Kellyanne Conway, we talked about yesterday, I was not thrilled with that kind of rhetoric. I just find it a little ridiculous, and I think we should be trying to make amends and reaching out as President-elect Donald Trump is. But it'll be interesting to see if this internal strife about the loyalists and the sort of the old school Republicans can somehow make amends in the White House.
Well, look, I respect and appreciate loyalty as much as anyone, right? But we all know that the stakes could not be any higher than they are. And around the selection of these critically important, especially Secretary of State, my goodness, it couldn't be more important to pick the best person, more so than the most loyal person, right? So for someone like me, you know, I look at a Mitt Romney pick, and that's encouraging possibly because, number one, it shows us first that Donald Trump might not be as petty as some of us suspect.
Right.
That you can look past this. Yeah, I mean, it was really egregious rhetoric on the campaign trail, but if you can say, you know what, forget what you said about me, because this actually isn't about me. You know, this is a very important point here, right? This is about the good will and what's in the best interest of the American people. And if he decides after this kind of callback interview with Mitt Romney tonight or whatever that he's best positioned, I trust President-elect will make that decision regardless of what happened between the two of them.
Congressman David Petraeus, as Secretary of State, misdemeanor, pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor for mishandling classified information. As much as Donald Trump hammered Hillary Clinton about how she ran her State Department and what was going on with the Clinton Foundation, do you think that gets Petraeus into trouble if he's the nominee and has to go through confirmation?
Well, let's keep in mind that David Petraeus had to pay, I think, a $100,000 fine. He was on a misdemeanor. He paid the price to do so. I think that's a difference than somebody such as Hillary Clinton, who had nothing lobbied against her in terms of a penalty. That investigation, by the way, there's still a lot of things that we still need to learn about that. But David Petraeus, I think, is a great American, and he has proven himself over, decades of time. He made a mistake. It was wrong. It was absolutely wrong. He admits that it was wrong, and he's paid a penalty. But, at some point, you got to move on.
I think one of the interesting things that people forget that Mitt Romney and Donald Trump have in common when they talk about how, maybe they don't have that much in common in terms of their worldview. You were talking about that. Is the idea they're both businessmen, right? I mean, they're both deal makers. They're both kind of turnaround guys. I mean, Donald Trump is somebody who's, had businesses go bankrupt or taken over bankrupt business, brought them back into fruition. Mitt Romney, that's what private equity is all about, is that you go into a business that is failing for one reason or another because you see the opportunity there, you see the way to turn it around and make it profitable. I mean, they're both people that specialize in that and can really go out and make deals. And on that level, they understand in negotiation that you have to look like you are willing to walk away from the table without question. I think in that sense, they have a lot in common.
Yeah. The tone that Donald Trump took on election night, I thought, was pitch perfect, sort of putting bygones in the past and going forward, which is why I'm surprised to see some of his staff attacking Mitt Romney so publicly. If Mitt Romney can get over the election and the wounds of the past, and Donald Trump can as well, I don't understand why his staff is sort of taking it into their own fruition to go out and attack the candidate. I know there's
because
lots
they're the voice of the base. They're the voice of the base. That's why they're speaking to when Donald Trump's most loyal supporters between New York City and California, when they see Mitt Romney, they're still angry about, because Mitt Romney wasn't even running and he was running his mouth.
But if he were so secure with Rudy Giuliani, he would already have named him Secretary of State. There's something missing there. Otherwise, he would have already made this decision.
There are conflicts of interest with Giuliani partners.
I was joking about their date night, but they have met several times. He's having dinner with him at Trump Tower. Clearly, he's a front runner in the running for this, and I just think it is bad move, and it only gives ammo to the left to attack our possible next.
But isn't that what it's about, though? It's about getting out there, maybe giving voice to that and putting it to rest. I mean, is that possible that she's out there sort of saying, we know you feel this way as the base, and kind of taking all the incoming, and then that puts it to rest? Ebony, what do you think?
I think that could be the way they're playing it. And I also think absolutely she had Trump's blessing, of course, before she goes out here. I don't think anything rogue is happening at this point in this upcoming administration. I also think this, to your point, Dagan, people are mad about it in the base, and I understand that. But the danger of the echo chamber is very real. And one of the chief criticisms around President Obama was he had an echo chamber, right? No one to hold him accountable and say, Mr. President, respectfully, we disagree, and actually there's facts that look different than what you're talking about. That's very, very critical. So if that's a Mitt Romney opportunity there, that's important to me.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's important to a lot of Americans.
Yeah.
All right. So could Obamacare as we know it soon be over? The impact Congressman Price, as America's health chief, will have on the health care law. Plus, why Gallup tells us that most Americans may not be sad to see it go. And what are we learning about yesterday's suspected attacker on one of America's largest college campuses? Why signs are pointing to the possible link to terrorism? And the former al-Qaeda recruiter the feds say the suspect called a hero.
Fox News alert: the FBI investigation whether an attack at Ohio State University that left 11 people injured has links to terrorism. Law enforcement sources telling Fox News that the suspected attacker, a Somali-born student seen here, posted an online rant against the U.S. before plowing his car into a group of pedestrians and then attacking them with a butcher knife. And if it wasn't for a quick-thinking campus police officer who shot the attacker dead, the carnage could have been a lot worse. Agents are also combing through his digital history to see if he had contact with any suspected terrorists and for any traces of terrorist propaganda. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us live from Washington with more on this. Catherine, give us the latest details.
Well, thank you, Melissa. Fox News confirmed this morning that there is a reference to the American-born cleric Anwar al-Awlaki in the suspect's social media, referring to the cleric as a hero, and that's significant, and we're told deeply concerning to investigators because it's another piece of evidence suggesting Artan was self-radicalized. Fox's ongoing reporting has shown that Awlaki, who was killed in a 2011 CIA drone strike, is the father of the digital jihad. This booking photo is from 1997 in San Diego, where he was picked up for soliciting prostitutes. But despite these arrests, to this day, Awlaki's radical teachings are consumed by those who follow al-Qaeda as well as ISIS. The New York, New Jersey bombing suspect, Rahami, who was charged just this month with terrorism, was also a follower of the American cleric based on his notebook obtained by Fox News. The Awlaki threat is also seen in the domestic terror attack last December in San Bernardino, California by Saeed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik, who opened fire at a county health office, killing 14 and seriously injuring 22 people before the couple was killed by police. This morning, a Republican senator on the Homeland Security Committee said the cleric is the common link.
A lot of these individuals that we've seen of late, whether that would be from the attack that happened in Orlando or in San Bernardino or others, we're watching some of the Anwar al-Awlaki videos online, and we're being radicalized in their own homes watching some of these videos.
Two law enforcement sources tell Fox News that Artan came to the United States as a Somali refugee and was granted status as a legal permanent resident. In August, Ohio State student newspaper The Lantern ran this interview with Artan, who identified himself as a Muslim. He said he was looking for a place to pray openly and worried about how that would be perceived. We're told this morning that there's no evidence that he had help. The FBI does have his electronics, and we're told the FBI is trying to get the necessary authorities so they can look through those devices to see if he was reading the recent ISIS propaganda that called for attacks using vehicles as weapons, as well as using knives. Melissa.
Wow. Catherine Herridge, thank you so much for
You're
that
welcome.
report. Let's bring it back out to the couch. Congressman, your reaction.
Well, first, this campus police officer, you know, you think about it. You go to work that day, you just don't expect much is going to be going on, and the next thing you know, you're drawing your weapon and you're taking down this person who is running people over and trying to kill people. This guy is a hero, and he ought to be treated as such and remembered for that. I've requested, or later today I'll request what's called the A file on this person to learn how is it that this refugee family came to the United States. You know, let's look at it with a critical eye and understand that we have to vet people and understand who they are before they come to the United States. So let's review that process and see what we can learn there. But the self-radicalization, it's a very difficult equation for law enforcement to tackle. It really is. There's no simple solution to that.
No, it's true, Megan, because if you have somebody that comes to this country as a sincere refugee who's, you know, seeking safety and then becomes radicalized over time, I mean, you always hear about people who come, you know, and have a challenge fitting in and assimilating, and in that sense are turned against the country. It's difficult to protect against that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of constants with these stories. 18 years old, polite, went to mosques, I believe, every day, was a loner, used, you know, a car and a machete in order to attack people. I think that's most jarring right now, is this new trend that ISIS has put out to use cars to kill as many people as possible and machetes instead of guns. Obviously, that's a trend that we already saw in Nice in France. this is only getting worse. I don't know. I certainly don't know what the answer is. And Congressman, I want to ask you, if you don't mind, what do you think we need to do to help with these lone wolves that are being radicalized in our own country?
Well, it does start at the local community, because understanding these kids who are not assimilating, who are loners, who are out there by themselves, it does take a community to help envelope them and bring them in and work with them. But there is no simple solution, and I really do worry about the invasion of privacy. I just don't think you can have or trust the government to come in and monitor everybody all the time in the name of security. That's not who we are as a nation.
Ebony? No, that's true, too. And as we're sitting here discussing this, weighing these kind of constitutional protections around First Amendment and freedom of speech, but also, and privacy, Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, right? But then ultimately, it's the protection of the people that matters most. And you're right, Congressman, we have no safeguards, that even if we do the most extreme steps around that it's even going to protect us. And if we're not getting at least that benefit, then what's the point? But I want to talk about community, because oftentimes when we talk about these people that become self-radicalized, I hear a lot of blame around, well, it's up to them. They come over here, so they need to assimilate. They need to work to be a part of community. And that's absolutely true. But I do want to challenge us as a community to say, be community members, because I see a breakdown in community in this country in general. And it saddens me, and there's a lot of repercussions, and this just happens to be the one that's kind of in our face and has real deadly consequences.
Well, the consequences of the last 8 years, quite frankly, is a failure to acknowledge that this is a war based on an ideology. We talk about lone wolves. These aren't lone wolves. To quote Sebastian Gorka, the connective tissue between all of these assailants, whether you're talking about Nidal Hassan, the Tsarnaev brothers, the bomber here in New York City and out in New Jersey, and this man, Abdullah Khan, is the fact that they are buying into a jihadi ideology, one of hate and terror, a bastardization of Islam. But that's what it is. And until we acknowledge that as a nation, we will never be able to fight it.
There you go. All right, a potential showdown looming after Obamacare critics and Georgia Congressman Dr. Tom Price is tapped to lead the Health and Human Services Department. Could this be the end of the Affordable Care Act, or will repealing and replacing it actually be tougher than expected? Plus, President Obama preparing a final flurry of executive orders, before leaving office, despite warnings that President-elect Donald Trump could undo them. More on that coming up next.
Back to our top story, President-elect Donald Trump tapping Obamacare critic and Georgia Congressman Tom Price to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Price has been fighting to replace the Affordable Care Act for years, introducing bills in every Congress since Obamacare was introduced in 2009. Price saying about his nomination, quote, "There is much work to be done to ensure we have a health care system that works for patients, families, and doctors, that leads the world in the cure and prevention of illness, and that is based on sensible rules to protect the well-being of the country while embracing its innovative spirit." But some top Democrats already slamming the pick. Senator Chuck Schumer saying, quote, "Congressman Price has proven to be far out of the mainstream of what Americans want when it comes to Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, and Planned Parenthood. Thanks to those three programs, millions of Americans, senior families, people with disabilities, and women have access to quality, affordable health care." His nomination is akin to asking the fox to guard the henhouse. This all comes as new Gallup survey finds Obamacare remains unpopular. 53% of Americans say they disapprove of the law, and 43% say they want major changes implemented. 37% want it repealed and replaced. These are big numbers. I don't know what Chuck Schumer is reading. 53% of the country disapproves of Obamacare. In my home state of Arizona, premiums were well above 100% for many Americans. I mean, is Tom Price the guy to help us repeal it?
Oh, hallelujah. Tom Price is helping you. It's a major plank of the Republican platform. Of course, it's one of the first things, if not the first thing, that the Congress is going to do is repeal and replace Obamacare. We're going to get that in the House and get it over to the Senate as swiftly as possible. And I hope by the time the president is sworn in, he actually has something right there on his desk that he can sign, because there are millions of people that are suffering through this. You're right, Arizona, the premiums doubled. In our own household, our premiums have gone up. The deductibles have gone up. We get less choice. And Tom Price understands this. He's a wonderful patriot patriotic human being, an orthopedic surgeon for decades. He's the chairman of the budget committee, and as somebody that I've known personally now for years, I got to tell you, he's just a rock-solid human being. So I sent him a text message last night and said, I'm going to pretend I actually know you. And he sent this quick text back, said thanks. And I just thrilled for him. He's really just a great person.
What do you think the reality is, though, that Obamacare will be repealed? It's a main platform Donald Trump has ran on, important to so many Americans.
It's going to happen. People like Chuck Schumer and others are going to try to slow it down and then blame Republicans for, their inaction. But there is a mandate from the people. It is something that Donald Trump committed to, and I'm sure he's going to follow through on. Part of our Better Way program that we said in the House of Representatives, we all ran on this, and we won on it. So, of course, we're going to do it.
Go ahead.
No, he has some very specific points, too, on how to deal with this, because, of course, the devil is always in the details and these kind of things. And when you're looking at the plan that he put together in particular, talking about giving people refundable age-adjusted tax credits in order, rather than being in these exchanges that are collapsing under their own weight, where insurance companies are bailing because they're losing money on it and they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make money instead. He's talking about giving people tax credits to go out and buy their own insurance.
Instead of the government subsidies.
Yeah, and also if you're on Medicare and Medicaid, that you can also take tax credits and opt out of that and go buy private policies. I mean, he has some interesting practical solutions.
We focus so much on Obamacare, obviously, given the impact that it's had on everybody's health insurance. But Tom Price is also going to be overseeing Medicare, which, by the way, is going bankrupt in less than 12 years, when it will be paying out 87 cents on the dollar in benefits. He's got to tackle that. He's got to tackle an FDA that is overwhelmed. He has to tackle drug prices that are skyrocketing.
That's a lot.
If Hillary Clinton had won, she wants the government to negotiate drug prices for Medicare. She wants to cap drug prices. He's got to get his arms all around that, too. Can he do it?
Oh, absolutely. If there's one person that I believe in that could do it, it's this doctor, this orthopedic surgeon who is come to Congress. He's the chairman of the budget committee because he's wicked smart and he understands numbers. So he's got the right balance between the two.
Ultimately, though,
pick.
if you get the government out of healthcare, even in a small way, it means saying no to somebody. It means saying no to somebody who's in Medicare potentially. Like, you can't have everything at the cost of the taxpayers who are still working.
Let me make this point, though, and respectfully, Congressman, when we talk about repealing and replacing Obamacare, I understand that that's what you guys ran and won on, right? But semantically, I'm sitting over here kind of looking on the outside, like, this is interesting to me because we know President-elect Trump has said that he intends to keep at least two components of the Affordable Care Act, the staying on your parents' insurance until you're 26, and, of course, the pre-existing condition. So when I listen to the statement from Senator Price, Representative Price, rather, I'm almost like, who would disagree with that? So one way to look at it, I guess, is repealing it and replacing it. Maybe that's indeed what happens. But another way for those that are not so interested in that mandate, so to speak, we just want something that works, whatever that is. Perhaps there's another way to look at it around improving upon in many important ways. I think you said 43% of Americans want to see that. So that's just another way to look at it.
We got to drive down prices, and we got to make it work for people so they have access.
Sure.
And I think Tom Price can do that.
And minimize the disruptions because it's a very personal thing, your health care. Meantime, President Obama planning a flurry of last-minute executive actions. Melissa, this is where you've grown. Before he leaves office, despite warnings from Republicans in Congress, and the fact that President-elect Trump will have the power to erase many of them. Politico reporting just under 100 final regulations are under review and could be implemented by January 20th. Among them, rules to further entrench Obamacare, to stop states from defunding Planned Parenthood, and to ease the flow of immigrant workers into the United States. I've pointed this out before, Congressman, but President Obama has passed economically significant, with $100 million or more economic impact, more than 600 regulations out of the White House. A record number of rules. It breaks out to be more than $800 billion, and that is about $2,300 per person in the United States. How quickly can Trump roll these back?
Well, he should do it immediately. I mean, right on day one, he promised to do it. He can do it. And look, if President Obama couldn't get it done in the first 7 years and 11 months, maybe that's a clue that yeah, it wasn't that important, or he's overstepping his bounds in the last 45 to 30 days of his presidency. But yeah, if you can do it that easily with an executive order, you can repeal it that easily with an executive order.
This was ruled by fiat, quite frankly, and the only knock on Donald Trump going into the White House, Megan, is people worry that he will do the same thing, because you see what you can do with the power of the executive office.
I think President Obama's sort of egregious use of executive order is what Americans hate about Washington, D.C. It's what they hate about politicians. I have this image of him like in the White House at night in the dark with like all his minions around him, like signing furiously as much as possible. He has as much crap done as possible in the last, 8 weeks until he's out of office. And again, I have no problem with Donald Trump going in there and being like, bye, done, no more. I can do an executive order too. I don't like executive orders as just like a general rule, but listen, what can be done can be undone, and I look forward to watching Donald Trump completely undo everything that's happening between now and Inauguration Day.
I mean, you live by the pen, you die by the pen. You would know this better than anyone. If you don't get consensus behind what you're doing, then there's nobody whose reputation is at stake and promises at stake to keep it in place where it was. And we've seen this with this president. I think he thought he was going to be able to hand it off to Hillary Clinton and keep a lot of things in place. And now it's sort of this very rude awakening. And we're watching him in the last minute try and scramble and shore up the Iran deal, try and shore up what's going on in Cuba. And I think that it's a wasted effort.
Well, what you're going to say?
I don't know. I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So if it's done with the pen, it can obviously be undone by the pen. And I certainly would expect President-elect Trump to do that. But I'm not going to sit here and criticize President Obama for doing it, because, of course, he's doing it because he thinks it's a good idea.
Yeah,
he's doing it because it's consistent with what he's been doing.
It's more convenient. It's swifter, but that's not the American way. Our founders set it up.
We have exec orders, and he's not the first president to use them aggressively.
They've been way over.
George W. Bush has used them very, very aggressively.
More economically significant rules.
Sure, but we're talking about executive orders in the totality.
Let me be clear. We're talking about more than 600 rules came out of the White House. That is a record for 8 years.
I'm not disputing
it is more than President Bush. It is more than President Clinton.
If you talk about the strict economic benefit impact, sure, but in its totality, it's really not very much different than President George W. Bush.
It is more.
But that doesn't make it.
It is wildly above what other presidents in 8 years have done.
Not number-wise, not in its totality, David.
Yes, it is.
No, it's absolutely not.
I have the numbers. President Bush was in the 400s, and President Obama was over 600. No, I have the research. I've done it myself.
So we have in Congress what is called the REINS Act. And the idea is to pull back on those reins a little bit, and the bill says if there's an economic impact of $100 million or more, you have to get the concurrence of Congress.
I'm not disputing that.
I wish that number was zero.
Sure.
Okay, I think it should be zero, but at least that would slow the president down, because I think the executive branch has taken far too much power. And the way our founders set this up, it's not supposed to be the most expedient, convenient way to do it.
I understand that, Congressman. You understand that, at least I see from President Obama's perspective, if he feels, not saying that he does, but if he feels that he has a Congress that is not cooperating and is stagnant, then
that's not the way.
To him. I guess I don't criticize.
As President Obama said, elections have consequences,
of course
and the Republicans have dominated in the House, and they won the Senate again.
So
and there is a mandate, but there is a mandate for the American people. They don't like this. Now the courts have jumped in on immigration, on the overtime rule, on the EPA issues. They have come back and said,
when you overreach, you should be scaled back by the courts. I don't disagree with that at all.
But it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
This kind of rule by fiat, though, is the reason that Donald Trump got elected. And I will tell you why. Because people have been sitting around for 8 years going, my wages are not growing. This economy feels really lousy. And when you put a horrific burden on business in this country in terms of rulemaking done by one individual elected to the highest office and all his cronies surrounded him, that's what he has wrought on this country in terms of making it harder to do business in this nation. Wages don't grow, jobs don't get created, and we have a new president from a different party.
Economic component. I'm only saying executive orders are not new under Obama's administration.
I'll have the numbers in overtime. How about that? Because it's more than 600, and it was only 400 under President Bush.
No, it was more than 400 by Bush.
Okay.
I saw it. We'll talk about it.
I know I'm right. The Hillary Clinton email scandal is far from over. Congress continuing its investigation. And now Judicial Watch reportedly set to push for Clinton to hand over emails she exchanged with President Obama on her secret account. Congressman Jason Chaffetz has been leading one of those investigations. He reacts to all of this. next.
Well, she may have lost the election, but that doesn't mean Hillary Clinton's email scandal is going away anytime soon. The president of a conservative watchdog group that went after the former Secretary of State tells the Washington Times that, quote, nothing has been settled, and they may seek other documents, including messages Clinton exchanged with President Obama from her secret account. In the meantime, Democrats on Congressman Chaffetz' Oversight Committee calling for him to investigate any possible conflicts of interest that President-elect Donald Trump may have with his business dealings. In a letter, Democrats on the committee writing, quote, you have stated publicly that you will hold Mr. Trump to the same standards as President Obama and Secretary Clinton, and you have not taken steps to conduct basic oversight of these unprecedented challenges. Americans across the country have flooded our committee's offices with thousands of calls in strong support of the investigation, jamming our phone lines with more calls than we have ever received in response to any other issue. So, Congressman, let me start with that part. What do you have to say about all that?
Well, you know, Democrats find themselves in a difficult position because they never thought they were going to lose this election and certainly lose it at this level. And I love that they've suddenly found this deep desire and principle of openness and transparency and the need to have documentation where have they been for the last 8 years while this administration's been there. Nevertheless, Donald Trump has not yet taken office. He hasn't been sworn in. He did provide a financial disclosure that you can go online and look at all of these financial interests that he has. That's out there as public record. But he just named in the last couple of days who's going to be his general counsel. He's trying to fill out a cabinet. When we get to January 20th and he's sworn in and he is the president of the United States, things are different than while he is now still a private citizen.
He does have a big and very complicated business in 35 different countries. You know, having his children at the helm of it, I mean, it presents a big challenge in terms of transparency, in terms of making sure that you don't even have, I mean, set aside what legally may or may not be there. You just don't want to be dogged by scandal the way the Clintons were. So how would you suggest he deal with that?
Well, he's got to comply with the law and rights. Priebus, the incoming chief of staff, has said that the Trumps will be in full compliance of everything that's required.
It's more than that.
Give him a chance. He hasn't even been sworn in yet. So it's pretty hard to criticize him or suggest that there should be an investigation by Congress when the guy hasn't even been sworn in yet. Democrats are kind of showing their hand saying, oh, this is what we're going to accuse him of when he hasn't even been sworn in yet.
Okay, listen. I agree with you that he hasn't been sworn in yet, and so I don't really care until something happens. Hillary Clinton I care a lot about. Obviously, is she just going to get off scot-free? I loved Lock Her Up. It's one of the things that Donald Trump said that every time it came on TV, I was like, lock her. Yes, I loved it. He said he's not going to go forward with an investigation.
Which upset you.
I didn't like it. Is she going to get away scot-free for everything?
Well, remember, Congress, they don't give us handcuffs, and the prosecution is left to the executive branch. But there's still a lot we need to learn. Remember, State Department has 14,900 documents that they have not yet given to Congress, plus tens of thousands of additional documents. You have issues that the FBI has not commented whether they're doing an investigation or not doing an investigation of the Clinton Foundation. You have
based on the Fox News reporting, they're investigating the Clinton Foundation, and they have the Cheryl Mills and the aides laptops that weren't destroyed.
We have a lot of other things that are still moving parts out there. This was never a politically motivated investigation, and just because there's been a political election does not mean that we stop doing what we were doing. We have a duty and an obligation to provide oversight. That's our constitutional responsibility, and it's bigger and broader than just Hillary Clinton. There are still, the State Department still has its own open investigation into security clearances. Absolutely. So, of course, we're going to continue to look at it. Of course we are.
As well you should. I agree with that. But here's the other thing. As you said, it's the House Oversight Committee, right? So not the House Oversight Committee of the Democrats or the Republicans. So if indeed something was to come about that raised suspicion to your committee, would you be comfortable looking at that from a President Trump?
Oh, absolutely. Look, as chairman of the Oversight Committee, I have a duty and an obligation to provide oversight. My job is not to be a cheerleader for the president. And if the administration steps over the line, of course we're going to go after that. There's always somebody doing something stupid somewhere. And there's 2 million federal employees. Most of them are good, hard-working, decent, patriotic people. But when they step over the line and they do something stupid, yes, we're going to go look at it and we're going to get to the truth and reveal it. And hopefully in a bipartisan way.
Final question. you're right, he hasn't been sworn in yet. He can't have done anything wrong around that yet. But is there a way that Donald Trump can get in front of this? Kind of to Melissa's point around the appearance of impropriety that you would recommend.
He is getting in front of it. He's got some days, some weeks. Go ahead.
Well, just the fact that it's had so much exposure, I think they, hey, look, when you're the president of the United States, every single move, every single thing is going to be criticized. A lot of people are saying, well, there should be a blind trust. Well, my understanding, at least to the information I saw, Barack Obama doesn't have a blind trust. So, let's understand. There's a Congressional Research Service has done some history on this. And then there are laws on the books. And so we'll let it play itself out.
There will be a corporate structure that satisfies everybody, even legally. The transition team is well aware of that.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll see. Looking forward. All right. Growing outrage over the removal of the American flag on one college campus after students allegedly burned the flag to protest the presidential election results. What angry veterans are saying, plus reaction from Mr. Trump himself.
This stands for all the veterans around the whole nation, everybody who fought for this flag. It's more than just a symbol.
Too much blood has been shed for our country, for our freedom.
More Outnumbered in just a moment, but first to Jenna Lee with what's coming up in the second hour of Happening Now.
Hi there, Megan. An announcement that's really grabbing some attention and certainly will over the next several days. Who the White House is sending to Cuba to attend the funeral of Fidel Castro. We'll get you caught up on that. Plus, massive wildfires raging out of control in Tennessee. What's standing in the way of firefighters battling those flames? And the popular docu-series Making a Murderer, getting a closer look at a new book. Why the author says the jury got it right. That's all top of the hour at Happening Now.
Looking forward to it, Jenna.
One school is facing backlash as it stands by its decision to stop flying flags on campus, including the American flag. 1,000 veterans gathered at Hampshire College in Massachusetts on Sunday to protest the decision, which was made following an incident where students allegedly burned the American flag on campus to protest the presidential election results. The school says removing the official campus flags was meant to provoke meaningful and respectful dialogue and point out that students are still allowed to display flags. But critics, including Springfield Mayor Dominic Sorno, who joined in on the protest, says it's offensive.
The veterans have given their blood, sweat, and tears in order for people to lead the lives they want to lead, whether it's good or bad or we agree with it. That opportunity is not available to them in other countries. Show the proper respect to the flag, show the proper respect to our veterans.
President-elect Donald Trump also weighing in this morning on Twitter, adding that nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or a year in jail. Now, Congressman, I want to come to you on this because I know that you spent the Thanksgiving holiday in the Middle East serving Thanksgiving dinner to the troops and with the troops. What do you think they must think of this type of display?
Gosh, what are they teaching those kids at that college? Look, I had the honor and privilege of spending my Thanksgiving on the San Jacinto, which is a Navy cruiser out there in the Arabian Gulf, about 50 miles off the coast of Iran. This gentleman that I sat with right there, his wife was having a baby in Florida. I think it was their third child. I hope I got that number right. He's out there serving his nation, 5 months at sea. He's a pilot on a helicopter there, and his wife's having a baby. And I can't imagine what he thinks of people who are treating and disrespecting the flag. These happen to be some Utahns that I had a chance but people from all over, about 385 people on this ship protecting America. And what an honor and a privilege. They had rank advancements, and it was really one of the great highlights of being there. We have Marines that are out there in Bahrain. That happens to be in Bahrain. But people who are serving. This pilot who flew me in on a Seahawk helicopter, he's from South Carolina, serving his nation. All the way from their families on Thanksgiving, and that's hard.
Megan, you're from obviously a very high-profile military family. What is your reaction to this?
Okay, so the only piece of art I have in my apartment is a giant American flag, so you can imagine how I feel about this. everyone who wants to take down American flag, you have to go to Walter Reed and go see what sacrifice for freedom really looks like. It's fine. You want to take a flag down? You just have to go to Walter Reed for a day. I think it's disgusting. I think everybody at Amherst College have lost their damn minds.
Yeah. Hampshire,
excuse me.
What's interesting, though, is that Donald Trump tweeted this about burning the American flag, that it should be, you should lose your citizenship, which we don't do in this country, or spend a year in jail. But it was Antonin Scalia who voted with the majority in Texas v. Johnson that makes flag burning protected speech under the First Amendment, right? And so as repugnant as we find it, as repugnant as Antonin Scalia found flag burning, he still understood what the Constitution meant, and that was what he did. And that's what that's what these men and women are protecting as our First Amendment rights, as horrible as it looks.
Yeah.
Scalia's called them weirdos who burn the flag.
I totally agree with you. I hear what you're saying. I also look at this college, though, and if you read deeper into the story, they talk about that they lowered the flag in protest to the outcome of the election. I mean, they're doing that. That's kind of amazing to me that the school is doing this. They also cost $60-something thousand to go to this school. Median income in this country is about $54,000. I mean, what a luxury to go sit at this school and burn this flag. Wow, those kids are really privileged.